at Strathmore. My name is Leslie Lundgren and I'm the exhibition manager here. And on behalf of Charlene McClellan, who is the mansion director, we are so pleased that you're joining us today. We have Eric Danker, our guest curator. He's from the National Gallery of Art. And we have Dario Zucchi, who is the artist of The Unexpected Smile. Welcome, both of you. Thank you so much.
To introduce Dario Zucchi, who I refer to as Il Maestro, because he is the master, and he is the master of juxtaposition. As you've seen looking at the photographs, his subject is the human figure. The human figure put into just the proper circumstances. Always seen from behind, almost. Mostly in front of paintings, but sometimes sculpture and sometimes photographs. And the amazing thing, to dismiss the question that comes first to everyone's mind, they are not posed. He's never offered to help anyone with their costume, or their hat, or their haircut, or their hair color. They are momentary. They exist as a juxtaposition for a moment, and that is the great talent of Dario, Dario's eye, to see what is possible, to put it together, and to record it, and then it will never exist in quite the same way again. And so these are the things that I think we need to acknowledge for Dario's artistry, as you've seen in the photographs upstairs. We will be happy to field questions, but I'm going to ask Dario to talk about a few things, and let him also introduce himself.
Well, I'm Dario, and I have a great pleasure in what I'm doing. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. And every time I go to a museum, first of all, I have the great pleasure of being in a beautiful place with beautiful art. And I inspect that art. And many times I don't understand that art, but I don't care about that because mostly I want to use the art for my specific purpose. If I want to go and see art that I like, I go, I don't take my camera, and I enjoy it. But when I take my camera in a museum, I really don't care about the quality or the value of the art. I care about if the art works for me. And so, when I walk in, first I make an inspection of the museum and to see whether I can identify art that can work for me. Then, after a couple of hours of this exercise, I start looking around at visitors and to try to match a visitor and the art. And every time I see in my eyes that potential combination, I get so excited. I am so happy. I'm so energetic that I can stand in those museums from the opening time, which usually, being a member of most of them, is 1 hour before the opening to the public, until they kick me out. And if I, at the end, last minutes, if I see a person that works with a piece of art, I grab that person and say, stand with me for 5 minutes, and I will take the photograph, because it's so exciting. I am so happy. And my purpose is, first of all, to be happy myself. And then, when I have the opportunity, and most depends on Eric, to exhibit it, I'm so happy to see people that, looking at my art, smile, because they are happy. Because I don't have any message whatsoever to send. I want just to make people as happy as I am when I do my photographs. And I think that in those circumstances, I try to put my brain on hold for a moment and to let only my eyes and my heart to work in order and to do something that is obvious visually and emotionally also for the people that look at what I do. This is great. Particularly at my age, I am so happy.
And so in Italian, sorriso is to smile. And so I wrote that Dario's photographs come in the Italian dictionary between sorriso, smile, and sorpresa, surprise, because that's really where the intersection comes. He often stands by the front door, notwithstanding the end of the day when you need to move somebody around, but essentially, let's put it in the vernacular, he stalks people. And he follows them until they come to the appropriate place. And then he will sometimes ask if they'll stand still. First of all, he always asks permission. And most of the time, they're happy to have their photograph done. But it's always from behind, so for the most part, they're not identifiable. The works themselves are identifiable, but they're in detail. And he may move them a little to the left or right. He may ask them to crouch just slightly so they're in the right place, but he never does more than that. And the amazing thing, when you go right back to the beginning of his career, when we go back 8 and 10 years ago in these photographs, the first of these great photographs, the one of the figure in front of Rousseau's Sleeping Gypsy, the woman who had the most magnificent and color-coded scarf that matched the painting. And we have spent the last 10 years explaining to people that it wasn't posed. It never was something that was anything but fortuitous in the truest sense, that it was accidental, but Dario's eye brings them together.
And indeed, at the beginning, I think that I started having an idea of doing the things 15 years ago. And at the beginning, I wanted to be candid, really candid, in the sense that I wanted to find the person in front, the right person in front of the right painting at the right moment in the right location. And then I realized that was silly, because I was missing so many opportunities. I was seeing the image, but that person, it was impossible that was standing in exactly where I wanted it to stand. And so I started compromising a little bit with my candor, and I decided that it's worth it to approach the person. When I see the combination of the art with the person, I approach the person, I try to smile as much as I can, and well, fortunately I don't look very threatening. And I asked the person, listen, first of all, I am not going to take a photograph of your face. For two reasons. First of all, because everybody will run away. Secondly, because I don't care about the face. Because, even worse, if I put the face of a person in one of my photographs, that will be a portrait of a stranger that nobody could care about, and then it will distract from the composition of my photograph. So that is the key that opens all the doors. And I must say that 99% of the people react positively, because they see this old man just approaching him, asking a very unusual and surprising question, to take a photograph for the back of their head and so they got a little intrigued. And I said, what's going on here? But because I was smiling and I was not asking anything absurd, probably is absurd, but anyway. And they tried to cooperate very, very pleasantly. And so I bring those people, and as Eric was saying, just put them in the place where I want them to be. And I see that they have fun. And also the other visitors around that finally realize what I am doing. Usually there is a little crowd of people behind that comment and laugh and smile, and it's a kind of entertainment, which for me is extremely pleasant, because I have to interact. And then most of the time those people disappear, and I don't have any trace possible. In other instances, instead, there are people, particularly young people, that say, "Wow, can I see the photograph?" And I show them. And they, "Can I have one?" Okay, so I give my business card with my email address, and I say, "Listen, so you should send me an email with your description, of course, because I cannot recognize you. I will send you the photograph. And indeed, that is what happened. So there is this kind of 10, 15 seconds at the most connection with a pure stranger that I never met before. I met for 15 seconds and I will never meet again. But it's such an intense moment that really makes me very happy, which is my purpose. By the way, this morning I had a great surprise. I received an email from a stranger person, said that having seen this exhibition, think that has identified one of the persons, the visitors, in one of my photographs as his deceased mother. And he wanted, and described the photograph, and he wanted to know more information about that. And so I keep a very detailed catalog of everything I do. And so I went back, I dug in that, I found the photograph, and I sent them. And I remember that lady. She was, not so young. She had white hair, but she was very elegant and very nice. And that happened maybe 5 years ago. But I remember that, which is great, gives me so much joy, because those brief encounters are so meaningful to me. And so
You should tell them about, because it's a very popular photograph, the photograph that's on the landing of the stairs of the kaibat, of the umbrellas, the Paris scene rainy day. You should tell that story.
Oh, that's fun. Because I went for 3-4 days to Chicago at the Art Institute, and of course I spent 3-4 days over there. And once I saw the Caillebotte painting with the Paris in a rainy day, I knew that there was a potential there, but I really didn't know what to do with it. So I decided to stand in front of that painting, and I stood in afternoon for 3 hours in front of that painting, looking for a man with a black hat. But nowadays, no man wears hats, even less black hats. So after all that long time standing there and being on alert, because I couldn't have missed that thing, finally I was tired, frustrated, and I decided to take the last walk around the other rooms surrounding that one and try the last shots. And indeed I find that little man with a black hat and a black raincoat. Oh, I just grabbed him and said, "Listen, please, come, follow me." And I placed him in front of the painting in the position that I wanted him to be. As soon as he looks at that, he realizes what I intend to do and turns toward me and says, "Do you also want the umbrella?" My goodness, I almost fainted. I said, "Oh, sure." And so he reached down his backpack that he put on the floor and pulled out the umbrella and opened the umbrella. And so I started shooting. Probably that lasted 3 to 5 seconds, no more than that, because can you imagine to see the guards that they were there looking at the guy opening the umbrella in front of a piece of art, very precious. So I took 3 or 4 shots, and then he ran in one direction, folding his umbrella, of course, and I ran the other direction in order to escape from the guards, and that is the result. So everybody say, "Well, you staged this." No, I don't. My imagination will never get to the point of imagining a man with a black hat opening an umbrella in a museum. No, I am not. I don't do it. I cannot do it. So that's a problem. But it's another component of my happiness.
I hope all of you have had a chance to walk around upstairs and to see the exhibition. This is the 4th exhibition we've done in the area.
Yeah.
We started with an exhibition that was at the Arts Club, and that was shared with Dario's brother Lucio, who's a marvelous painter, and so we had a chance to show the two of them together. And there was a second show, solo show at the Arts Club. And in between, we showed at the Embassy of
Yes.
Italy. So that this is the fourth of the exhibitions in the area. We tried very hard, if you've seen the other exhibitions at all, to make this mostly new work. So there are a few things that are on the steps that we've shown before. And Dario is very kind, and Leslie, in saying I'm the guest curator, but everything we do is a collaboration. And so we go through and decide what we're going to show. Dario tells me the things that he feels very strongly about. I show him the things that I feel strongly about. We come to a nice decision on what to actually show. But in this case, it's really, most of the work is relatively new work. And so it's a little different. If you're looking for old favorites, you can go online to dariozucchiart.com, and under the archives you can see some of the old favorites. But one of the things that you'll have noticed that Dario has begun to do only in the last, I think, 3 years, is to go to the Museum of Natural History, where there are very wonderful large-scale photographs of animals. And so this was a little twist on what he'd done before. And so there are a few of these upstairs.
Yes, and that is a great source of production for me, because every year there is an exhibition of large photographs taken by, is a kind of competition of wild animals, nature and so. And the size of the photograph is such that really fits perfectly on my requirements, because I need the proportion, I need the perspective. And they are big, and there are funny animals and everything, and particularly there are so many visitors to those shows. It's always crowded with kids and families and so. And so for me it's a great opportunity to go there. And indeed I took many photographs of that. And then Eric, who is a master in these things, when there is an exhibition like this one, he makes the selection of the photograph, having already in his mind where they are going to go to and how they are going to be combined one to the other. And sometimes he makes some selections of photographs that I couldn't even think about you would have selected. And then when it comes to lay them out and put them on organize them on the exhibition, he's a master. You know, really, I see the little wheels in his brain. They start rotating, and at a certain point he gets one of, let's move this here, let's move it there, and everything. And the end result is what you see upstairs, which is perfectly consistent, you know. And you go from room to room, and you have the different stories for each room. And I'm very happy.
We have a lot of fun, as you can see, and we have fun at all times. But at no time do we have more fun than when all the work is out and it's on the floor, and we start walking around and saying, "Okay, let's try this over here. How about putting this in between these two and letting that play off of the others?" Upstairs, there is a room. The first room that we put together was the red room.
Yes.
And it's the red room, and it has that one large image that is very powerfully yellow. And then there is a black and white room. And there's almost always a black and white room,
Yes.
wherever we go. But this time we had a lot of fun with the fourth room, which has a series of different photographs. Some of them are just of legs, because in fact most of them are of the torso and head rather than of legs, but there are a few that are only legs. And then there are several that are bald heads, that utilize bald heads. And then there are what we call the naughty photos, where there are these juxtapositions with images that themselves are a little naughty, and then we have people staring at it and juxtaposed as well. The animals that are upstairs, these are not the largest number of animals. I urge you to go online because there are marvelous ones with animals. But for instance, in combining a couple of things, there is a wonderful one from natural history of a bald man who appears to be having his head licked by a large cat. So the photographs and the opportunity, they're always changing, they're always new, they never get old, and Dario is always trying something new, trying and thinking, and his mind is working about different juxtapositions. It's not the same as it was 8 years ago or 6 years ago. There are always different things.
And another funny part is, when I take these pictures and the other visitors realize at that moment what I try to do, it's really a show. I am so concentrated in what I am doing that maybe I don't pay too much attention, but the few times there is a little crowd behind me commenting and laughing, and it's so exciting, it's so beautiful, and I'm happy.
The reception was a couple of nights ago, and there was such energy in each room. People speaking in Italian, people speaking in English, the sense that everyone was having a really good time. And it's true, and Heidi just said to me, how often do you go to an exhibit where you immediately smile and you laugh, and that's the product of the surprise of the juxtaposition. And it's really very much what Dario's art is about, this idea of a very light touch and the joyousness of the image itself.
Indeed, sometimes when I say I spent days and days in museums, and sometimes I just walk by a group of visitors with a docent that tries to explain the particularly contemporary art. And I was saying this afternoon that my formal art education ended in 1957. So most of the artists that are exhibiting now in museum, particularly abstract art and so on, were not even born at that time, so I don't know anything about that. But when I hear those docents or the guides that are trying to explain that art, the particularly abstract art and everything, and try to describe what the technique of the painter was, how he was pouring the paint or working with brushes and so. And then the psychological, and political or orientation of the artist. And they were trying to explain all those things. I usually cannot get it. My brain doesn't connect with what I see. And so what I try to do, what I'm doing, is to try to get myself and the people that look at my photographs to put their brain on hold for a second and just to let their eyes and their heart to talk to them and to relax and to enjoy it and to not to think it. The other artists try to download on the visitor all their frustrations. I try to relieve whoever sees my art from their problems for a moment, to give them a moment of light pleasure, visual pleasure, something that doesn't require any explanation unless I have to explain or to describe what I did there, because when you see that profile of that Muslim lady with that white dog in the back of her shirt looking at the moon, if I don't describe it, nobody can understand what it is. But I don't have any message, I just want to be happy.
They're not in a very plain way, they're not political. There's nothing political about the work. You will have noticed, and we owe a debt of gratitude to Leslie Lundgren, who was so important in helping to organize the exhibition and helping to make sure everything worked. You'll notice the labels, which she had produced, the labels don't mention who did the artwork that people are looking at. We had no catalog for this show. We are working on a book, and the book will come out in the autumn. But there have been catalogs, and we've written, and the work has been shown in other places where there are essays and there are greater elaborations. But for the viewer, we're more interested in simply telling them what museum it was in case they wonder where that is. And Dario tends to work in museums along the East Coast. Chicago is a little exceptional.
Yeah.
But Richmond, he'll go down to Richmond. He likes Philadelphia. MoMA does a lot of the kind of background. But one of the most fertile of all places is the art fair in Milan that Dario goes to every year.
And that is a great opportunity because it lasts 3 days and there are more than 100 gallerists and art dealers that show their stuff. And there are zillions of visitors, people that, and they are usually people that go to an art fair or are inclined to art. And most of the time there are many people that wear strange things, trying to mimic the art. It's incredible the variety of the imagination of the people, of the clothing and so on. So that is a very great sort of thing. And by the way, the other day we were sitting down, I was showing Eric my album with all the photographs that I have taken. I make it kind of a preliminary selection, and then to sit down with him and say, yes, no, yes, no, always with a smile. It's very good with me. But for me, it's like going back to the first time that we met. Because that lady over there is my wife, and she is a docent in the National Gallery, and Eric is her boss. And when I play the chauffeur on Saturday when she has a tour and I have to drive her there, so at the beginning I was enjoying the art. At a certain point it was always the same story, and so I started to take my camera and take photographs. But I was doing it for myself, just for my pleasure. And once I met Eric, and I said, I want to do a book of my photographs. Can you write something for me? And Eric said, well, let me see your photographs. And he didn't know what I was talking about. And so we had dinner together, and then after dinner I showed him the little book with the photograph that I have taken. And I was there like, a little kid at the elementary school, looking and waiting for the teacher decision. And finally he said, Dario, what about an exhibition? Oh my goodness, that was the beginning of the story. And from there, that goes back to 2010, right? And so the fact that I'm taking the photographs, and then I make my selection, and then I show them to Eric. It's so much fun. And then he is able to pick up the ones that already he anticipates that can put together either in an exhibition or in a catalog or in a book. And it's so much fun. And particularly, I couldn't do anything like this without him.
Thank you. We owe it to Jo, Dario's wife, who was so important in introducing us. And also, as you might have noticed, that our collaboration is punctuated by wonderful meals. So Jo prepares wonderful things with their longtime housekeeper and cook. And so typically I'll go over around 7 o'clock. We'll spend about an hour. We'll have a nice dinner. Actually, we have a little Prosecco first. And then we have a nice dinner. And then we clear the table and we get down to work. And we may work for 2-3 hours a particular evening. This exhibition was among the smaller. I would say after the embassy, this is probably among the smaller because we've also collaborated on 4 exhibitions in Italy. And the exhibitions in Italy, the first one was in Milan at the Oratorio della Passione, next to San Ambrogio. It was a marvelous experience, but it was, and Dario and I laugh about this, it was typically Italian in that everything, the show was only up for a week. We arrived a couple of days before. There were no lights, there were no panels. It was an empty space. And the people that operated the space then, under Dario's direction, put up all these baffles immediately, did all the lighting, and suddenly it was an exhibition. And we had press coverage and other things. But the 2 biggest shows were in Pisa, at the Museo della Grafica, which is part of the University of Pisa, Scuola Normale, which is the Harvard of, and so right on the Arno River in the middle of Pisa, beautiful location, beautiful old palazzo, and the work looked marvelous. But once again, we went, we laid out the show, they said, go away for a week and come back and we will, it'll be up, all you'll have to do is put up the labels. So we laid out the show, we went away for a week, we came back, nothing. So everything was just where it was. And so we had to put up the labels and take care of the lighting with them. But in each case, the Italian public was thrilled. And both shows were really very successful. And that's where the cultural minister who came down from Genoa first referred to you as Il Maestro. So we've had a good stretch. I guess this is the 8th show in 9 years. And so we're very happy to have it here at Strathmore because the rooms are lovely, the lighting works fine. It's really a perfect venue for us.
There is one thing that is typically Italian that happened in this occasion, which is the poster. We got the poster designed by the designer at the National Gallery, so that everything worked perfectly. And the poster, of course, was supposed to be delivered long in advance the opening. And it was promised by the day of the opening, and the night before, Eric received an email from the printer saying that the poster will be delivered promptly the 14th. The opening was the 10th. The 14th is this coming Tuesday, Monday. So those things happen also here.
Also, that's true. So, are there questions you'd like to ask about any of the particular works, or Artie?
Well, the question is, how do you deal with lighting in galleries?
I don't. The fact is that the galleries usually provide the lighting. I'm talking about the photography that I take.
Yes, when you are in a museum.
Oh, I don't do anything. The digital
It's
cameras,
just-
the digital cameras are so magnificent that they do everything for you. I set my camera at the same 1/80th of a second speed and 8 of aperture, and that's it. First of all, because I am not sure that I would do anything better in changing it. But then I cannot change it because I don't have time. Because when I see an image, I must be ready on the instant to show it. Otherwise, I miss it. I cannot say, stand there now and start maneuvering and the lights usually are okay. Some are darker, but then when I take the files from my camera and put it in computer, even though I don't know anything, I don't have Photoshop, I don't have all of those tricks, but there is a little software that allows me to increase the light or the contrast. First of all, the most important thing that I do is the cropping. that is really what I want to do, because I see the image as cropped, but I want to take a larger image when I shoot the photograph, because I don't want to leave behind some details. So I want to have a bigger image and then to crop it, rather than maybe by mistake to leave a little piece.
Well, if I could just add to that quickly, first, Ed, there are early photographs when Dario was using a different camera where he took a more tightly composed image that when he went to blow it up, it became grainy, because instead of taking the whole thing, he had taken a tighter image. And when it was blown up, because Dario really likes this size, and it's important, I think, in photography, the size. Stieglitz, if you saw Stieglitz steerage and it was this big, it would have no impact. Scale is very important in photography, and it is here. And so, there were a couple of early images where we don't make them too large because they get a little bit grainy. But that's been solved by using a more sophisticated camera, and the more sophisticated camera has a loud click on it. And so that also helped to lead Dario to telling people that he was going to do this, and that allowed him also to move them a little bit.
What's the camera?
What is
It's
it?
a Nikon D810. It's very heavy. That contributes to my fatigue.
Yeah.
How many shots do you take of an image before you get to get the image that you want?
I would say that in a good day, when I go hunting, I have between 15 or 20 images, of which I take usually around from 5 to 10 shots, just moving my camera a little bit, asking the visitor to squat a little bit, or to move this away, in order to have a kind of variety of similar photographs from which to pick the one that I like the best.
Do you do any children?
I did only one in a very successful photograph. No, children, usually I don't take children because they are too short. And so and the art is exhibited against the wall, and so if I either take the children or the child, or I take the art. But once I received from the director of the Museo della Grafica in Pisa, where I had previously an exhibition, an email saying, do you have any photograph about botanic art? So I had a hard time in looking what botanic art was about. But then I realized that I was told that botanic art is a form of art that's very common, because there are artists that reproduce flowers, whatever. And they were organizing an exhibition about botanic art. I didn't have anyone. But I am kind of stubborn in certain things, and so I went to the Botanic Garden on the mall for 3 days and looking for something. Fortunately, at that time there was an exhibition of photographs of small flowers, photographs taken by a lady in Virginia, of small flowers that were blown up big, nice, big. And so I was there, maybe let's hope that something happens. And the third day I was there, it was presidential day, vacation or holiday. The third day, at a certain point, there was a group of little girls, that tall, no more than that, black, with a mother or somebody. And there was this little girl that was just charming, because with all the hair with kind of colorful beads and so. When I saw her, so I approached the mother of that lady and said, listen, I don't make a photograph, don't take a photograph of the face of the girl, but she's so wonderful. And so she was very nice, and it was cold, it was winter, so I asked to remove the jacket of that girl, and sure enough, she was wearing the pink t-shirt. And I was ecstatic. So I placed that little girl over there and started shooting. And then that was on Monday, and I was able to see Eric only on the following Saturday. And I went there and showed them, and I said, well, probably this works. And so we picked up 3 or 4 of them, sent them Saturday afternoon, sent them to the guy in Pisa. On Sunday morning, I found on my email, this one is fantastic, I want it. Sure enough, I got it printed, and it was exhibited, and was very successful. Of course, I donated it to the museum. Then, after a few months, I received a letter from the president of the University of Padua, where there is the oldest and most important botanic garden in the world. And they were having a big ceremony, a big exhibition. And they asked me the permission, to give the permission to the Museum of Pisa to loan my photograph to Padua. That was not very difficult for them to obtain my permission. So this is the only child photography that I have taken.
And as a curator, I'm reticent to add, but there is yet one other that we should mention, and it's a good story as well. By the way, Dario never actually got to see the photograph when it was up in Padova, but I went and saw it, and it looked great among, it's in a brand new section of the Botanical Gardens for exhibitions. No, famously, the 2 little girls in the Corcoran at the top of the steps.
Oh,
in the
yeah.
Corcoran.
Oh, yeah. That was many years ago at this point. And I was at the Corcoran. And on one of the landings of the big staircase of the Corcoran going up, at that time there was a statue, a bronze statue of 2 big dogs that were either playing or fighting, doing something that were very in strange positions. And it was a day where there was some kind of African-American celebration of something, and there were black people all over the place wearing beautiful things, and they were singing, having a great time. And I was there on the staircase when I saw 2 little white girls with white dress, and they were standing and playing in front of those 2 black dogs. I was on the phone with that lady there, and we were having a kind of animated conversation, let's put it this way. And we were discussing. At a certain point, when I saw those 2 little girls, they started dancing in front of those 2 black dogs. I put my cell phone on the edge of the staircase railing, and I started taking photographs. And Joe kept talking and talking and talking, and I put it. And then when I finished taking those photographs, which are absolutely incredible, I picked up the phone. She kept talking and talking, and we agreed. And that's really that's amazing. And thank you for reminding me, because there are so many of those that it's fun that I forgot it.
So, and those are not only the only 2 of children, but I think they may be the only 2 where you actually see faces, where there's actually, it's only children.
Yeah, even though over for the little black girl, it's a kind of profile.
Right.
You can see that she's slightly smiling, but nothing. And also the little girl with the darks, they were so far away that you cannot recognize the face.
So, for those 2, go online, and you'll find those. One is very early, so it's in the classics, and you can find. Actually, maybe they're both in the classics by now. It's hard to remember. The website now has about 450 of the photographs from the last 10 years.
and keep doing it.
Right, because there'll be more added next month, in fact. Yes, Heidi?
I loved your account of people gathering and watching you do the photographs. Have you ever staged someone to document you taking the photo? Do you have any pictures of the process? And the little crowd?
No, I don't stay, particularly when I'm taking the photograph, I cannot pay attention to what's happening behind me. But it happened in one photograph that is exhibited here, and it's the photograph of that kind of blue background with that old man with the kind of the raincoat. And that, I took it at Whitney in New York, and that was a elderly couple, and when I approached them, they had a kind of reaction. But when I asked the person to stand in front of that painting, the man was really nice and started understanding why I wanted to do it. And then when I took my photograph, I left, and I went by just a little bit later, and there was his wife doing exactly the same thing. And so I took, of course, the photograph of the wife taking the photograph of the husband in front of the painting. But I don't show that.
On Thursday, this happens very often at the openings, and the openings are always very joyous occasions. On Thursday, there were people who were wearing things that were just right in front of these photographs. And so that's why, Arlene, when you came in and I said, perfect striped shirt, that Meredith had on black and white, which went with one of the black and whites, and there was somebody with a very strong black and white blouse on with their husband when...
And I already have received some of those from my friends.
Great.
Look at this.
Everyone will be Dario after they see that.
But indeed, it is good, because what I notice is that after people have seen my photographs, they are telling me that when they go to museum after that, they see the art with a different set of eyes. Because probably it's...
And I should say that Meredith, my partner, and I now will see people in different costumes and say, too bad Dario's not here. That would be perfect for Dario. So, unless there are any other questions, we're happy just to have a chance to talk to you privately. Anybody else? Yes.
What, did you photograph, did you do photography before this, or did you come from another medium?
No, I did photography only but like anybody else. You know, I used to have a nice Rolleiflex and the SL66, it was, and I used to take photographs like anybody else, you know, family and scene, you know, landscapes and all this stuff. And they were all slides, 6x6 slides. Then, at a certain point, I had the whole catalog in big metal boxes and everything in the attic. And there was a big storm, and it was flood, everything. I lost everything. And so, for many, many years, for several decades, I stopped taking photographs. And then I started again with this game. And that's...
So, for those of you who haven't met Dario before, Dario was a resident of Milan. He and Joe lived together in Milan and began the family there. They moved to Lugano and they came to the United States in 1979. And they didn't speak English at the time.
Not even now.
And they came, and he has been very successful and had a whole career before this, not as an artist, but this is a second career, and mostly since Dario's retired. But Dario had lots of other interests in the area, which the family continues with as well.
Thank you so much.
So thanks for coming, everyone. Really nice to be with you. This was very family-like. Thank you.
Thank you. is the visitor's book over there. And I
Dario
noticed
was.
that people have been very nice with me because of this getting filled with comments and everything, which is really what I care very much.
It's the afterlife of the exhibition. The
Yes.
exhibition will be for 5 weeks, but this way there's comments and it was a whole book from Verbania.
200